Anyway, what's up, guys? I am back for another video. I am continuing on with the Die Hard movies. We are on Die Hard 2. Tomorrow, I'm going to review Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I haven't watched in a few years. I do remember it being really fucking good. But today, I'm reviewing Die Hard 2. Tomorrow, I'll do a Bands I Love on Papa Roach. It just shit came up today, but definitely tomorrow. This movie, after rewatching it earlier, it's good. I think it's solid. I think it does get a bit of a bad rap because it almost gets like forgotten about, because when they talk Die Hard sequels, it's usually the third one, and then two is just kind of there. I think two was pretty good. It's a simple plot. It's not as simple as the first one. It's definitely a bit bigger. Like there's more locations compared to the first one. But I really do like it. I think Bruce Willis is still fucking great in it. I'm okay with some of the side characters. I like that they made it a bit bigger, in scale. I think the only real negative is the villain. The villain's just kind of there. They don't have any like presence. Like Hans Gruber had presence, whereas this guy, he's just kind of a generic terrorist guy. Like, that's my only negative about this movie. So this movie kind of starts off Bruce Willis. It's 1990, so it's set in 1990. Um, it's very much it's interesting that he works for like LAPD now. So it was cool seeing like other cops and stuff. That was kind of cool. Um, so John McClane, well, we're reintroduced to him. I wouldn't call this. I think I like that this film decided to do something different. Like it didn't just. We're just gonna be a copy, like because they could have just did the first one over again, but they're like, you know what? No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna try to do something a bit different with it instead of just let's make it a Die Hard, one again. Like they could have did. So McClane is waiting at the airport for his wife Holly, who you see her a few times in the movie. She's on a plane, and you see the reporter again, who was the guy who exposed Holly's identity. Like the sleazy reporter from the first one, he's in this. He's kind of just there though. I don't. McClane has a shootout with two guys who thought they were just, he started noticing they're acting suspicious. They get going pretty quick in this one too, like action wise. Like, I mean, within like the first like 10, 15 minutes, we got a shootout already. And obviously McClane tries to warn them, but obviously they don't believe. Like warn airport police, but they don't believe him. So Colonel William Stewart, who I think he's the bad guy of the film, he's just kind of there. I feel like the actor who plays him. I've seen him in other stuff, but I don't know. I just think my main thing is he's just kind of there. He doesn't have like Hans Gruber had presence. And it's just in that first one, and then just this, he's just, You don't even really know why. So they form a base, and William Stewart and his former members form a base in the church. They hack into air traffic control. I'll admit the one scene, which I'll get to, was really good. There was a really good scene with, I'll admit, that was like, okay. And kind of, it goes back and forth with like his wife on the plane. So McClane poses as a janitor. Or no, he allies himself with a janitor named Marvin to gain access to the airport because, his superiors don't believe him or anything. It's one of those situations. Um, we have Leslie Barnes, who I'm trying to figure out the actor who played him because I've seen him in other stuff. You know, I've seen him in like other stuff. Like the acting in this is solid. It's I'm just kind of skip it though. I think story wise, not a lot happens besides like you got a lot of shootouts. You get a firefight. McClane rescues Barn after a shootout because this is where I think Robert Patrick makes his appearance. Well, I'll admit it was cool seeing him because this was like a year before T2, so it was cool seeing him. But he was just kind of a generic goon that Barnes gets into a shootout with, but then McClane saves him, kills both of the guys, and then Stewart retaliates by he crashes a British airliner in with grenades, not grenades, but killing everyone on board. I'll admit that scene was pretty brutal when they just blew up a fucking whole plane with people in it. I'll admit that was pretty brutal, but that was like the only scene I felt like the bad guys had any oomph about them was that scene, and I'll admit that scene was done well, where they blow up a whole airliner. But I just, besides that, they're all kind of just generic bad guys in this, comparatively to like Hans Gruber in the first one. You know what I mean? Like, whereas with this one, I don't hate it. I think Rennie Harlan, who also directed, I think he's done some. He did a lot of like action stuff, but this one, I'll admit, it's not as like simple like Die Hard 1 was, but I like that they're like, we're not gonna just do Die Hard again. We're gonna use McClane as a character, but we're gonna have him do other stuff. Because they could have just as easily just did a Die Hard again. They could have just did Die Hard again. Like, same scenario, like maybe he visits his wife, something happens, like terrorists take over again or something. They could have just as easily did that again. But I respect that they're like, you know what, no, we're not gonna do that again. We're gonna try our own thing. I just think the bad guy's a bit weak. Because Hans Gruber had presence about him, you know? Whereas this guy, William Stewart, was just... Besides the scene where he blows up a whole airliner, I'll admit that was pretty good. So McClane learns Captain Esperanza, who's like or Lorenzo, sorry. He's like the secondary bad guy of the film. So he learns he's gonna learns about that. He decides to go outside. You get this kind of funny scene with him, you know, waving down a helicopter, well, not a helicopter, but a plane. He manages, McClane takes out the crew and tries to capture Lorenzo, but then, like Stewart and his men show up. You get this shootout. They have basically McClane pinned in the pilot area of the plane. They throw grenades, and basically what McClane has to do is get in the ejector seat, get in the seat, and eject himself out. Which I'll admit was a pretty cool scene. He ejects himself out. You get this big stylistic explosion. Like, I think the cinematography was really good. I think they did a good job of also capturing. It does feel like a Christmas movie. I mean, there's many scenes where it's straight up just snowing. Like, the snow is everywhere. Like, shit. But, yeah. So you get a cool little, So after that happens, after he manages to escape, so Lorenzo is his boss, who throughout the film, you know, he's that typical police chief that McClane, you're in the way and stuff. But then throughout the other film, he's working. So Grant it was Major Grant, played by John Amos, who You might know he was in like Good Times and stuff, and he was in a lot of movies. That's why I'm like I recognize that guy, but he's Grant was seemingly a good guy, helped working with McClane, but it turns out that no, he was working with Stewart the whole time, and that the gun he had blanks in it. So he manages to. Um, so then we get like kind of the final battle where McClane gets on a helicopter with this reporter. Um, Gets on a news helicopter, gets on the plane where the bad guys are, tries to take it down. Grant tries to stop him, but then McClane ends up pushing him in a jet engine, which, oh man, it was pretty brutal. There's some brutal deaths in this movie. Like, and then Stewart fights him, seemingly, while, though Stewart doesn't notice that McClane's taken the oil cap off, so like the oil is starting to just fall. So like all the fuel starts just firing, but Stewart kicks McClane off the plane, and seemingly everything's fine. But then McClane with a lighter, with the cat, with the, the classic yippee ki line, throws the lighter in the fuel, causing the plane to blow up. Then he waits for his wife's plane to land safely, then gets with his wife, and then kind of the film ends. I really like this film. I'll admit, it's not as strong as the first one, but I think they could have just as easily been like, you know what, no, we're gonna remake the first one again. And I think they did a good job by not doing that, because how good the first one was, you're not gonna do that again. It would have just been like a retread. So they were like, we're gonna do our own thing with it. I like the airport setting. I think they did a good job capturing that Christmas setting. The only weak spot is the bad guys. I just think the bad guys like had no presence about them. The scene where they blow up a whole jetliner, airliner, that was cool. That was actually pretty brutal. I didn't remember that scene, but it is also like they don't stand out though. Like Hans Gruber throughout that whole film in the first one, stood out. He had presence about him. Even like the secondary guys like Carl had presence, whereas these guys were just kind of there. You know, the scene where they blow up a plane was cool, and then there was cool action scenes. It was cool seeing Robert Patrick. I love that guy. I love Terminator 2, and I know he was in like other stuff, but this is a fun movie. I think Die Hard 2 works as a sequel. It's not the best sequel, but it works. It's a decent follow up, and also I didn't mention you had a quick cameo from Sergeant Powell, Carl Winslow. It was cool seeing him again, because McClane called him and asked him, I think, for like a favor, and Powell did the favor for him, which that was cool seeing him again. I didn't remember him coming back, but it was cool seeing him again. But overall, this is a good film. It's not great, but it's definitely good. I think people go in on this one too much. Yeah, it's not the first Die Hard, but it's a decent sequel. And it's a fun action film to watch if you want to kill 2 hours. If you have 2 hours available, watch it. Tomorrow I'm going to review Die Hard 3, which I'll admit will probably be better, because I remember Die Hard 3 being really good. I love the dynamic between Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson. So that'll be cool to talk about tomorrow. I'm also going to do a Bands I Love on Papa Roach. Out of 10, I'd give Die Hard 2 an 8, a solid 8. I think it works as an action film. McClane had some good one-liners. The biggest thing I want to mention, they could have just as, I mentioned this several times in this review, they could have just as easily been like, you know what, we'll just remake the first one again. Because some sequels do that, which is fine. Like, with Friday the 13th, it's okay just kind of doing the first one again, where it's Jason just killing people. Granted, Jason wasn't in the first one, but still, it's somewhat the same movie, where you got a killer just killing people off. That's kind of what the Friday sequels were. So that's okay. But with something like this, I think it was a good move to just do your own story. Don't just do the first one again. Don't do a story where they take over like a building, and then just he has to kill them off again. Like, that would have just been kind of pathetic. So I think it was they did a good job just doing their own thing with it. So yeah, Die Hard 2 is pretty good. I would definitely advise to watch it. Just don't expect it to be as strong as the first one, but if you just look at it as its own movie, it's fine. But other than that, as usual, what other than that? Fuck Warner Brothers. Fuck Disney. Fuck LeBron. Fuck Kevin Smith. And for sure, fuck Joe Biden and his shitty administration. This movie's pretty good. I would advise you to watch it. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Peace.